Hello.
Hello.
Welcome, Victoria. I am so happy that we're changing things up a little bit. You're the first one other than Thais to join me for the Expat Coaches Hangout. And thank you for reaching out. Thank you for wanting to do this because I think it's just exciting, right? To be talking about the different things that show up in our coaching practice. And when we had our little talk before where we were talking about, okay, so if we're doing this, how are we doing this? You mentioned visibility as the topic that is most exciting to you right now. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Of course. So thank you for being here and thank you for this great idea, Julie. It's really great. And I'm happy to talk to you today. And yes, visibility is this year really my red thread. And so I want to bring it more in my courses, in my program, but it's really a red thread in my life. So it's both. And I think it's perfect for that. We can just start about because I think it's the so-called A and O you should have for your life abroad. But it's really that makes my clients really they worry about. And I try to figure out where it comes from because I know it from myself. As my experience was very a deep one, I know that there's so much about this culture shock theme as well because you don't think about your visibility at home. It's just there.
It's baked in, right? It's part of
Yeah.
the package.
Yeah.
And I think being abroad is one of the first times that most people start thinking about how do I show up? Who am I? Right? And how do people see me? And do people see me? I think you coach both expats and spouses, right?
Yeah.
You do both. I think it's more pronounced with the spouses because you are just this extra problem to be solved by the company. You're more or less like an extra suitcase that somebody brings along, right? And to have that and also be visible throughout that and to decide who you want to show up as, I think that's a huge deal.
Yeah, and as you mentioned it, I really focus on the spouses because I think it's really a spouse's subject, maybe. And I had in the last weeks a lot of talked a lot about with people about that, and it's really different. So I found out. So when I've been abroad without family, on my own, I didn't think about it because I had to get in action. Otherwise, I couldn't have gone abroad, of course.
Yeah.
But things changed when I was an expert spouse. And of course, it's like there's an assignment, it's your partner's assignment. And even if you say yes to it, it's like a little bit, okay, it's his or her. Yeah. And here starts that you go a little bit back in your power. And you feel that when you just try to settle abroad, because then you go back to, oh, okay, I don't feel good because oh, he has his job and a structured life. I think this part of this pre-structured life of the
Mhm.
partner and maybe the kids because they have school and friendships and everything, and you have nothing. You feel not safe and feel unsure and you need orientation.
Yeah.
And I think if we speak about visibility, this orientation is a big part because before you had your orientation through your friendships, family, job, and career, it resonates you. It gives you a kind of, if you think you are like a sun and shining, and you have these rays and the rays are gone. You have no ray now of friendship, of family, of job, and nothing resonates to you.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah,
it's
and I
like,
think this picture of light, I think, is a good one because with a lot of my clients, I feel that they don't know how to shine their light because they don't even know if they have the energy to produce any rays of light, right? Because there's so much going on and everything that you knew you were before is
yeah.
suddenly gone. I see that time and again. And it's very sad when that happens, but also I see it as sort of a wake up call for a lot of people because this is when you intentionally rebuild. And something that's intentionally built will always be stronger than something that just
Mm.
happened. And this is when you're at home, it's a lot of people don't really choose their job, don't really choose their circle of friends, don't really choose any of those things. They just happen to them. And when you're abroad, things don't magically happen for you. You have to make them happen. And so that's why I feel while it's a big stumbling block for some, or it's a big wake-up call for some, it can also be the start of something really, really amazing, right? It can be almost like a starter pistol at a race where there's a big noise, but then something amazing happens and you start running.
I like that, rebuilding the power and rebuilding kind of more intentional behavior.
Mhm.
Because I think what I thought about in my situation and with my clients, it's like if you're at home in your home culture, of course you don't think about it. And what is a culture? I think a culture defines how your core needs are met. It defines a little bit, okay, social needs in the, maybe you know this pyramid of Maslow, where you have first the physiological needs and then the security, the identity, and so on. It really defines everything, how you sleep, how you eat, how you maybe go in social contact. And so a nice, cozy, and warm blanket around you.
One definition of culture is the way we do things around here, right?
Yeah.
And like for a company culture, for instance, but I think, yes, it is that you feel fine. Like a fish feels fine as long as it's in water. But as soon
Yeah.
as you change the water, if you have a saltwater fish that suddenly is in fresh water or the opposite, then that's a big problem. And I think with culture, for a lot of people, it's the same. You don't notice it as long as it's there
Yeah.
until it's no longer there or until there are subtle changes like how much salt is in this water that really have a huge impact on how you live your life.
Yeah, and I think another keyword for this visibility thing is the word needs, because of course you have this needs in your culture you don't think about, but then you are in a foreign culture, you don't know anything, maybe even the language, which can be a big, big problem, but you can't find your power back if you don't think about your needs. And that's again what you call the wake up call,
Call, yeah.
which I really like because I at the special point in my client's process, I ask them, okay, of course, it was due to the work of your husband or partner, due to maybe financial aspects or the career of your partner, of even the career of the kids, having super schools and international schools. And then I ask, okay, but what is it? What brought you to this life? And if I would ask your unconscious mind, what would he say to that? Because it's like this, yeah, okay, I have to awaken again and to find what is my inner need. Because sometimes you have the situation, and that's mostly that my clients have a kind of stage of sabbatical, that they really decided, okay, at the moment, my career is not so good because there are kids or something like that. But it's not only because of the reasons outside. They found out that, okay, there's something inside what have to change now. And maybe there are some needs of me which are not met at the moment in my home culture.
Mm.
And this is a great point.
Yeah. Well, and when you're saying what are your needs, I feel that very often if we are in this known environment, if we are in our home culture, we don't really think about that and we don't take the time. But then once they are not being met anymore, which automatically happens to a lot of us when we move abroad, then we start asking those questions. That's the one thing. The other thing I find though is that I have with not all of my clients, but many of my clients, it's almost counterintuitive to think about what do I need? Because when you are the expat spouse, when you are the accompanying partner, it feels like your biggest job, your most important task is to make sure that everyone else transitions well. Because
Yeah.
if you're not the one who goes to the office every day, if you're not the one who has to integrate in a new school system, who has to find a new circle of friends, etc., then it feels like, okay, at least I can hold down the fort, right? I can make sure that everything here is okay, that home life is stable for everyone. And a lot of partners that I know, they take on that responsibility And they feel that it's up to them to make sure that everyone else transitions well. But that's when you lose yourself. And you can't pour from an empty cup, right? If you have no resources, if you have no energy left, then how are you going to make life great for everyone around you? It has happened a number of times where people don't dare look at their needs because they feel that it is their job to make sure that everyone else's needs are met first.
Yes. Yeah, I'm with you. And so, because my clients are more women, being an expat partner often even reflects the part of motherhood. So sometimes it's really like, okay, I had too much stress in my old life with a part-time job and the career of my partner and the kids, and they step back a little bit because at the beginning they really think, okay, it's for me, and now we are abroad and we will have nice experiences together and I will have time enough for me. And then they're overwhelmed by the term me. And I think the motherhood part is really a big part because it's what they want for the family, of course. But then they have to reflect on that. Okay, who am I as a mother? And who am I outside of being a mother? And I think sometimes it's really the first time in life that they really think about that.
Yeah. Also because in many cultures, when it's normal that both partners work,
Yeah.
then kids are kind of not an afterthought, but it's kind of like you organize your life in a way that everything works for the kids as well. But then if you go to the host country and all of a sudden you don't have the excuse of having your own job and having all of this life around you, and all you are is a mother or a father. But I feel that for my male clients, for the fathers, the stay-at-home dads, I think it's almost worse or more significant, this shift, because for a lot of them, there's still this underlying assumption that as the male, as the father, you're supposed to provide. And then if you're not the one earning the money anymore, then oftentimes that can be even a harsher shift for them, a harder shift for them.
It's so interesting that they bring the male part because that's what I miss a little bit at the moment in my practice, of course, but I think it's really harder because it seems to be a cross-culture experience for male that they still define themselves as the provider.
And I
And
see this with people from a number of countries. It's not that you can say, okay, it's just the one country where it's defined that the guy is the one who has to bring home the bacon. I feel I've had this with clients from many different countries. So South American countries, from European countries, from North America, different places. So when it's the woman who is the expat and the guy who comes along, then it seems to be even a bigger shift for them, for sure.
I think so, yes. Yeah. And I just go back to another part, what we talked about. And this is this part when we go in the stage of sadness, because of course the change will create sadness,
Mhm. I would
you know?
even say not just sadness, but grief, because you really are grieving who you used to be, and you
Yeah,
haven't
yeah.
figured out who you are yet.
But some people, some women maybe, so it's about the women, my part, they stick to the, and then it's sadness because they don't come around with that. And I think that's a part where you have to accept because still looking forward to visibility. I think with this grief, there happens something with maybe with your inner core, with your soul, of you can call it as you want, but you have to go through it, of course. And people don't like to talk about that. And I experienced that very much in the, the communities, the expat bubbles, and of course, even in the Facebook groups or something like that. It's not common to talk about, and I don't want to go too deep in it, but I think we're back at the needs because every emotion is just a call for a underlying need. And every emotion has a message. And
Mhm.
so this grief has a message for you. And some people really need help for that.
So
And
what's the message? What if people are experiencing grief? What's the message that your body
it's,
is
yeah,
giving?
it's individual, I think. It's really individual. For some people, there comes a lot of old stuff at the surface. And even that has to be treated at a time in life. And I think the other part is that people then are kind of lost because in their expat communities, it's like sometimes, hey, you have just to go through it. Don't talk about it. We all have the same, but we don't talk about it.
Pull
And it's,
up your big girl panties and just go.
yeah. And so I really suffer from that because I think it's your new shining. I think it's so great that you have the chance to get through the stage in your life abroad and to find yourself in a new power and then really get back to that. So, you know, expat coaching is not only about getting this resilience to, okay, now it's good. I'm not so sad at the moment. I can regulate the things. You want to have more. So I really just ask sometimes, hey, why do we do this big change in life? Only to have the same as before? No.
That would be sad, right? But I think that the growth doesn't happen automatically, but it only happens if you have some discomfort. Growth rarely happens in the happy place, right? But I find that interesting that you're mentioning some in the expat circle will be like, yeah, it'll pass. Like just
Yeah.
hold your breath and it'll be over, right? Except maybe it's also because some people didn't get the support that they needed when they were going through it. And that's why they're like, well, I got through it by myself. So this newcomer, this person who's coming here, maybe they have to muddle through. I mean, I did. So I wonder if that can be part of it. And another part of it may also be that they we have a tendency to label emotions, right? As good emotions, bad emotions. And grief is just not a very sexy emotion. It's not something that people are excited to talk about, right? And a lot of people who are going abroad, who are taking that step, are people who see themselves as proactive, as doers, as shapers,
Mm.
as people who are brave. And that doesn't go with this idea of grieving, this idea of almost being a victim or having to deal with
Yeah.
negative things, which is, I mean, that's BS. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think that the grief makes us stronger. I think that the grief helps us grow in ways that we couldn't. And also, the more you repress it, the more it will come out at the moment that you least wanted to and you least expected it to. So I don't think people are doing themselves a service in repressing it.
Yeah, and I think it's really a part of the process. And even if you're surrounded by people where you think, okay, they don't have that, yeah, I think they miss it. And then the other part of this communities or some expat circles is really that even if they don't talk about it, you have this atmosphere of, I call it emotional dumping, you know. If you are with them, you feel like, oh, I didn't know that I was so sad. Even if, yeah, even if they don't talk about it. And that's the red flag a little bit. What I try to find out with my clients, they feel that at the very first time when they meet these circles, and some of them really tell me, okay, I saw this woman sitting there, but I think, you know, their faces were, oh, no, I didn't want to be a part of it. And I think that's a very, very healthy attitude towards oneself.
I've
And
noticed with most of my clients that in the beginning, you're grasping at any type of
yeah,
community you can get.
sure.
You arrive there, and then it's like, I need to meet people who get what I'm going through. And with many, that will fade after a while when you are more secure in who you are and how you're
Yeah.
showing up. And then you can be intentional about building your circle and building your tribe and finding the people who really matter. And I'm not saying that big groups of expats are a bad thing, not at all.
No, no,
But
definitely not.
especially for my more introverted clients, they go to those places, they go to those big events, and they're like, this was awful. They're completely overwhelmed. They're like, I never want to do this again. And that's when they realize that maybe that isn't how they should be building their tribe.
And I
And then
think,
we go about looking at how can you build one-on-one connections? How can you find people you have things in common with? And more things in common with than just you're both expats.
Yeah, and it depends on the culture. So I think we both have different culture experiences. No, you have been in America as well. But I
It
think,
happens.
for example, in America, you can really find places to mingle with American people because it's a little bit close to our mentality. And so it's helpful. But if you're maybe on China, it's more intercultural. And so it's maybe more helpful to have this expat bubbles or something like that at the beginning, because you need something that is a little bit closer to you than just to make at the beginning, the big step into a new culture.
Well, and with China, for sure, the language barrier is a huge problem to integrating in local society because there simply aren't. I mean, you can find people who speak English, but especially if you're not in Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, or one of the really big cities, then there aren't as many people speaking English as you would think. That's one thing. And another thing is if you're only in a little town, like where I spent more than 10 years, the town is called Shenyang, which most people don't know because it only has 8 million inhabitants. So it's a small town. And there, within the 8 million, there aren't that many foreigners. So you don't really have a choice. And that reduces your potential circle of acquaintances because there aren't that many people who speak English and there aren't that many people who will come from your background. For a lot of people, especially in the beginning, it feels like if I see a foreign face, I'm going to stick to them because chances are I can communicate with them. But again, that to me, it happens mostly in the beginning. Well,
Mm.
speaking of culture, do you think that there are different ways that people from different cultures define visibility?
Yeah, I thought about it. So for me, it started with the reading faces when I went, for me, it was the States. It took me very long to read the faces. And this is the kind of visibility first, I think, the very first visibility, what you or your unconscious mind tries to find out. Because there are common things which you don't know. For example, one maybe visibility part, it's not for visibility in job, but as a mother with my kid in Germany, I was used to, if there is a struggle with my kid, I went in on the playground, at the supermarket, or something like that. I had no chance. But it was not common to do that in the States. I always saw women or families talking to each other in a very, very kind of way and very nice. And I thought, okay, you should not be loud.
I tell my kid off, is it okay? Can I have a teaching moment here or should
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
not?
and it was not good for me to do my German way at the beginning. So I learned that. And of course, so you learn automatically things in the first weeks and months about this part of visibility, what you bring out of yourself and what you should not bring out. And maybe then it goes a little bit, yeah, vice versa, okay, oh, I think I have to adapt more. And it's perfect that you go in this cultural adaptation process, but on the other hand side, it prohibits maybe a little bit your own power. So it's both to go in the adaptation process, but still staying with yourself.
I think it's a fine line, right?
It's a
Because
very,
on the one hand, you want to integrate, but on the other hand, you don't want to completely lose yourself.
no,
You
you should
because
not.
your culture is part of you. So sometimes it may just be that you're aware that things are different, but then you don't necessarily try to always do it, as you said, the German way. I find it super interesting how there are certain aspects of culture that will align, and there are certain aspects of culture that will not align. For
Yeah.
instance, I've had a number of Mexican, Turkish, and Italian clients
Mhm.
who are very close to Chinese culture when it comes to things like education of your children, the way that family is valued, the way that hospitality is an important aspect. And so they had less struggles with how they showed up around those topics
Ah, okay.
than some of my other Western European clients.
Yeah, And at this point, these two models came to my mind, this peach and the coconut. You know that? Because I
Yes.
think I just thought, okay, that maybe has to do a lot with the visibility part, the coconut part, this we are in a culture with a very hard shell, but once you broke us, you are in.
Mhm.
And then maybe American are the typical. We do labeling now a little bit, but it helps a little bit with a soft fruit and everything. And if you then come to the core, it's hard. And at the beginning, you think, oh, you're totally in now with the small talk. And hey, I love the small talk.
I am a big
Really.
fan because trying to meet a German is such hard work.
Oh,
Trying to meet an American, like they do all the work for you, so that's awesome.
yeah, yeah. And so I think that's a part of visibility again as well, because you have to learn to know yourself and your background, your cultural background, and find out, okay. And that was interesting for me that people, and you talked about introvert and extrovert. So I'm more introvert as well. And my friends in Germany, they told me, you in America, that doesn't fit at all. They're so superficial and they don't want to talk too much in the depth. And you always try to find out really a deep connection. You have
All
to
the
see.
people who, of course, have never set foot in America, but they
Yeah, of
knew,
course, of
right?
course.
They knew
Sure,
way
sure.
better than you did. Yeah, of
And,
course.
and I went to the supermarket and the people were around me. They were so friendly. And we talked about the salami and that their daughter loved salami as well. I loved it. And I didn't want to go out with them, but I loved it. I
Mhm.
really loved it. And I learned to small talk. And that was really a big thing for me. And every time when I was at home over the summer months and I met an American in Germany, oh, yes, let's talk. And it was so nice. And then as a repat in Germany, I went to the supermarket and it was,
Well,
I ask you something. And so all these things make so much with your visibility. Maybe visibility is something about self-efficacy as well, that you go out and you feel, okay, I can do things. I'm seen, I'm heard and everything. And this adaptation process is very individual, I think. And for me, the explanation is we all have different experiences and different nervous systems.
I was waiting for you to mention this, and we're coming to the end of our time, but I have a feeling you and I need to have another talk because I really would like to deep dive into how you're working with regulation of the nervous
Yeah,
system with your clients. I think maybe today's not the time, but I
I
think we
think
should
so. But
definitely
I
have
had to
another
mention it.
hangout where all we talk about is the nervous system because this is something that I work with, but
Mhm.
more surface level. I don't really go deep with most of my clients. So I would love to learn something from you on
Yeah,
this
yeah,
topic for sure. But I think, yeah, I'm looking at the time. I think we're coming to the end of our
yeah.
half an hour that we had fixed for ourselves. So how about this? Let's put a pin in the nervous system.
I have a good pitch for that. Really,
And
true.
let's
Yeah.
let's use that as an
Yeah.
excuse to meet again and to have
Yeah.
another talk because I think this is something that many people will be interested in because it's not an approach that I've seen a lot of other people do. So this is definitely something we should discuss next time.
Only one phrase, only
Yes,
one
go.
phrase, because it's combining. I just to tell people, okay, this, the culture shock is not a mental construct which you can lose with mental things like you have to think about. It's really a bodily action, and you have to go in the body, and that's it.
Well, let's do that next time. For
Yeah,
today,
sure.
I thank you very much for your time. I loved speaking
So
to
much.
you. And yes, I have a feeling that maybe we will have a couple of other talks along those same
Yeah,
lines.
I would be so happy to talk about with you.
Sounds
Yeah.
good. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much for this.
Yeah. Bye.